Hey guys, this is Whitney, and welcome back to another episode of Spastic Chatter. Spastic Chatter is a platform meant to feature those in the Cerebral Palsy community, and I get together weekly with individuals with CP, like myself, to have an uncensored chat, if you will, about what it's like living with this type of disability. And for this week, I have Rob, and he wrote in wanting to be a guest on Spastic Chatter, and I have to agree that he has a pretty awesome thing he is doing. He has a podcast dedicated to disability engagement, and I'm gonna let Rob tell you more about his podcast and introduce himself. So.
Thank you, Whitney. I appreciate it. The podcast is about using disability engagement and just finding different ways to engage in society with crutches, and I'll describe it as I grew up with cerebral palsy and using my crutches to navigate the world. And I realized early on that people noticed my crutches differently than I did, where they thought that it was a medical device, but it was the device that I used to navigate the world, and that in itself caused challenges and difficulties just with understanding. But what I'm trying to do with the podcast is have people understand that the crutches, disability devices, literary devices, really any device that you can think of can be used to help empower people with disabilities.
That's awesome. I love that you said that people perceive them as just medical devices, but to us, like my wheelchair it's my way to get around. It's liberating for me. It's not just a medical device. Like I could it's my freedom. Like it's much more than just a medical device.
Yeah, I completely agree, and to me it's an extension of your whether it's crutches or a wheelchair. It becomes an extension beyond the person or beyond yourself, and it's also a different way to express yourself, and not everybody understands, especially if you don't have a disability, that the devices or the crutches or the wheelchair or any device helps you express yourself or helps you engage in the world and just become a participant and become successful in the world. And that's what I try to do with the Cerebral podcast.
That's cool. Like people see medical, in my opinion, people see medical devices as like a bad thing. Like they see a wheelchair and like, like I don't want, like they're like, I don't want to be in a wheelchair. Like that is the last resort. Like even if like say they have a disability or like something happens to them, like most people will do everything they can not to use a device, because society has put that thought in their head that it's bad to use, or that it's not necessarily bad, but there's like a stigma to using a medical device.
Yeah, I think the part of the conversation and miscommunication is that people when they use crutches or when they're going through operations or recovering from injuries, people normally go through 6 or 8 months of rehab in order to recover from a broken leg or do a. But in my estimation, for anyone who's used crutches or wheelchairs for more than 2 years, consistently every day, it becomes something different, and that's when it becomes the tool to navigate the world, and it becomes part of how someone understands and interprets the world too. And I think it's difficult to get over that if you only understand it as something that you've dealt with for 6 months or 3 months as part of rehabilitation, which most people without disabilities have that experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like the longer you use a device, no matter what it is, you in my opinion, you grow to like accept that device, and like you kind of accept yourself. The more you use it, and you realize how much freedom it gives you, and how much it's designed to make your life easier, and it's not the sole purpose is to not make your life more difficult. Now, society has their flaws where like not everything is accessible. So if you're a full-time wheelchair user and like you want to go out in the world and explore, not everything is going to be accessible. So like you have to like be prepared for those situations. So yeah, so you have a podcast. What is your? I want to get into the actual podcast itself. When or what has been your favorite episode so far?
My favorite episode is one that I did on The Incredible Hulk with Lou Ferrigno, and I also as part of that episode, I also mentioned and talked about The Wizard of Oz in episode 2, and Tool Time, and some other pop culture information, because one of the things that I believe is that it's not only what you do in physical therapy or in rehabilitation part of your life, but every part of your life, it becomes part of how you interpret the world. And so, and I grew up idolizing Lou Ferrigno, especially with him being the Incredible Hulk, and then finding out that he had a hearing impairment. And one of the things that I came up with for the podcast and through other work with disabilities is the acronym DRILLS, which is Dignity and Respect increases larger living space, and Dignity and Respect increases larger learning space. And then the reason why I like drills so much is because drills is not only a exercise, but it's a tool, and it's also routine. So that in itself is the way that I use to navigate myself, and I build my routines, and I try to help parents and other people with and without disabilities understand that language, whether it be acronyms, whether it be oxymorons like cerebral palsy. For me, cerebral palsy is an oxymoron because I use the cerebral against the palsy. I use my mind or different strategies to help navigate or come up with different solutions to navigate through my daily routine and throughout my life.
That's awesome. Well, you said so much that I want to touch on, but
yep.
You said that you come up with different acronyms. Can you think of any other ones that you've come up with?
Yeah, the one that I came up with recently is faith, which it can stand for following along in the heart, in the head, in the hip, in the heel, and in the handle. And what I haven't done an episode on this yet. I have one coming up pretty soon on it, but it's just a different way that the acronym just goes beyond the words itself to take on another meaning or another way of looking at it. So another one is I use 6 T's, which is the think, trust, tool, try, test, and train. And that's those 6 T's are what I use on a regular basis to think about, as far as thinking about an idea that I have and then going through and finally training on the different ideas that I have, whether it's going through physical therapy or going through different classes, going through work that I've done in my life, or doing my job.
That's awesome. So you use these acronyms to kind of like push yourself, right? Like it's kind of like your way of, I don't want to say coping with your disability, but it's like a way to change your mindset and other people's.
Yep.
Like, that's correctly. Or correct. Yeah.
It's a way that I've tried to create new meaning by using the same things, but creating my own meaning behind it, and so that it becomes not only part of the it becomes the way I adopt it and how I interpret it to be, and not only how the world interprets it to be.
Awesome. So now that you have such a positive mindset about disability, can you think of a time where you didn't have that such a positive aspect, and how did you overcome that, and like what did you do? So say there's someone that's like in a negative place when it comes to their disability, what advice would you give them from personal experience to be more positive?
So what I tell parents now, and when I talk to kids too, I ask them about what are some superheroes that they use, or role models that they have. One of the examples is Iron Man from the Marvel movies, and one of the things that he represents is the fight or flight. And so I'll talk about fight or flight when it comes to Iron Man, or if it's about Harry Potter. Well, how can you use your crutches as your magic wand? Or so it's really about finding out what the person values, and how I can change or help them realize that they can use and imbue their own meaning to their own circumstance.
That's awesome. So like I love that like you brought up like the Harry Potter, like one thing if the kid likes Harry Potter,
Yep.
and they're like that's very cool. So would you say the people that like you like your main audience would be parents and kids, or what's your main audience like for your podcast? Or
It's the interesting combination, because sometimes it is professionals that like OTPT that have the medical or clinical training, and then there are parents that one of the things that I talked to parents about yesterday was the process. Process is three things. It's a noun, a verb, and a system. And so, and the process is what people use or how they process information. And then it becomes a verb of what they're able to use or how they're able to move, and then how they're able to develop systems. So it really depends on who I'm talking to, and the different themes that I have. I'll give you another example where I just did one on the book Freak the Mighty that talks about the text world theory. And Freak the Mighty is a story about a kid on crutches, and then he befriends another classmate who has difficulty with a learning disability, and combined, the kid with learning disability puts the kid with crutches on his shoulders, and then they become something different, and they're able to then help people in their own world in 6th grade. And it's the book by Rodman Philbrick. And the movie stars Eldon Henson and Kieran Culkin with Sharon Stone and James Gandolfini. So
That's awesome.
It's really, I think, what I've learned not only through doing the podcast is that people have their own situations, but I think that people, if they look at their own environment, there's more that they can do than they even realize that they can do, just because of how they interpret the world. And it's about interpreting the world differently in a way that empowers someone.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I have one last question for you. That I want to get your thoughts on and your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a support system that you can go to, and how important is it to have a support system?
It's very important to have a support system. I have a family support system of my sister and her husband, and I have friends that are in the disability community, and I'm also part of the independent living community and on the state board for independent living, and that has also been helpful. I think the trick is helping to realize that what everybody's trying to accomplish, whether you have a disability or not, is executive functioning and how you can make better decisions. And that's what the emotional intelligence that I do in the podcast is all about, is using emotional intelligence to make better or more informed decisions, and to also get advice from your friends and different people in your support system to get help, not for them to do the work, but for them to help you to make the decisions and then execute on your goals.
That's really cool. Yeah, every answer you've given me, I wouldn't, you're changing my thought process, which is a good thing, because you're giving me new perspectives, which is very cool.
Yeah.
So when do you post, and where can people follow your podcast and all that? So
it's the Cerebral Podcast, and I also have my own website, which is just my name, Rob Targos, and I do a combination of emotional intelligence, process and disability stuff.
That's very cool. Well, thank you, Rob, for reaching out and wanting to be on an episode. I really enjoyed talking with you. And
thank you for having me.
I'm gonna have to check out. I'm gonna have to check out your podcast now.
And if I can plug a couple of your other episodes,
yeah.
Scott Johnston. I found out. I just did a search on Spotify and found your podcast through that, and the Scott Johnson episode was great, and also the Izzy Bullock podcast was on. So I really appreciate what you're doing as well.
Well, thank you. You're giving like the way you're doing your podcast and getting your stuff out there. It's something that I would have never thought of, like as an aspect to disability. Like, so it's very like intriguing, and I'm gonna have to check it out. But to end this episode, if you want to be on. Well, if you want to be on an episode of Spastic Chatter, there's always a link in the description, or you can comment on this video wherever you see it, and check back next week for another episode of Spastic Chatter. Thanks. Bye.